To understand a place, you have to listen to the echoes in its stones. In Israel, every stone has 1,000 voices. They speak of prophets and kings, of conquerors and refugees, of prayers whispered in 100 languages, and of wars that shook the world. This isn't just the history of a nation, it's the biography of an idea. A promise carried in the hearts of a people for 2,000 years, across continents, and through unimaginable darkness until it was planted again against all odds in the very soil from which it first grew. It's a story that begins in the deepest antiquity and lives in the urgent headlines of today. A story of survival so profound it forces us to ask, what does it mean to have a home? Our story starts not in 1948 but in the ancient dust of Canaan. Here, a people formed a covenant with one God, a revolutionary idea that would change the world. They built kingdoms under David and Solomon, their capital in Jerusalem, a center of faith and power. But this land, this narrow bridge between continents, was destined to be a crossroads. Empire after empire saw its strategic worth and its spiritual power. The Assyrians came, then the Babylonians, who destroyed the first temple and sent the people into exile. It was a pattern that would repeat, a taste of sovereignty, a golden age followed by the tramp of foreign boots. Even when they returned, as they did under the Persians who allowed them to rebuild their temple, they were subjects. Then came Alexander the Great, spreading Hellenistic culture, forcing a choice between assimilation and rebellion. The Maccabees rose in revolt, a story of light against darkness still celebrated today, but independence was fleeting. The might of Rome was next. They crushed rebellions with terrible force, and in the year 70 AD, they destroyed the Second Temple. All that remained was a single, weeping wall. With that cataclysm, the Great Exile truly began. The Jewish people were scattered to the winds, to Spain, to Poland, to Yemen, to every corner of the known world. The land was renamed Palestine by the Romans to erase its Jewish past, but the people did not forget. For to millennia, at every Passover Seder, they recited the same words, next year in Jerusalem. This wasn't a dream of tourism. It was the core of their identity, a memory etched into ritual. Through the Middle Ages, the land changed hands again and again. The Byzantine Christians held it, then the Muslim caliphates, for whom Jerusalem was also sacred. The Crusaders marched from Europe to reclaim it for Christendom, bringing fresh waves of bloodshed for all who lived there, Jews included. Then came the long centuries of Ottoman rule. Through it all, a small, continuous Jewish presence remained, studying and praying in the holy cities of Jerusalem, Hebron, Safed, and Tiberias. They were a minority in their own ancestral land, but they were the keepers of the flame. Meanwhile, in the diaspora of Europe, things were changing. The Enlightenment offered emancipation, but it often brought new forms of hatred. Out of this ferment, a modern political movement was born, Zionism. Led by visionaries like Theodor Herzl, who witnessed the raw anti-Semitism of the Dreyfus Affair in France, Zionism declared that the Jewish people needed, for their very survival, a homeland of their own, and that homeland could only be in their ancient land, Eretz Yisrael. In the late 1800s, the first pioneers, the Halutzim, began arriving. They bought swampy, malarial land from Ottoman landowners and, with incredible toil, began to drain the marshes and build farms. They revived the Hebrew language, a tongue unspoken in daily life for centuries. They were laying the foundation, stone by stone, for something that did not yet exist. Then, the world shattered. World War I redrew the map of the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire fell, and the British took control of the territory they called the Palestine Mandate. In the Balfour Declaration of 1917, they publicly supported the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people there, a promise that collided catastrophically with the national aspirations of the Arab population who had lived there for generations. Tensions simmered and flared into violence, but the real cataclysm was still to come. The rise of Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, the systematic, industrial murder of 6 million Jews obliterated centuries of European Jewish life. The scale of the horror was so vast it changed the moral calculus of the world. In the ashes of the death camps, the urgent question of Zionism was answered with a desperate, collective cry, never again. The surviving remnant had no home to return to in Europe. Their only hope was the promised homeland. International sympathy, coupled with relentless Jewish guerrilla campaigns against British rule, forced the issue. In November 1947, a weary United Nations voted to partition the land into separate Jewish and Arab states. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion stood in a small museum in Tel Aviv and declared the establishment of the State of Israel. He read the scroll of independence to an audience weeping with joy. Within hours, the armies of 5 neighboring Arab states invaded. The new country, not yet a day old, was fighting for its life. Against all predictions, it survived. The War of Independence ended with armistice lines, not peace treaties, and with a tragic human consequence. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs became refugees in exile known as the Nakba, or catastrophe, which created a wound that remains unhealed to this day. Israel was a reality, but it was born in conflict, and conflict would define its next decades. It fought wars in 1956, 1967, and 1973. The 1967 Six-Day War was a stunning military victory that left Israel in control of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula, and Golan Heights. Most importantly, it reunified Jerusalem, bringing the holy sites under Jewish control for the first time into millennia. Soldiers wept at the Western Wall, but this victory created a new, profound dilemma ruling over millions of Palestinians who did not want Israeli rule. The occupation had begun. The decades that followed were a dizzying cycle of war, terror, and fragile peace. There were moments of breathtaking hope: the peace treaty with Egypt in 1979, the handshake between Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat on the White House lawn in 1993. And there were moments of searing tragedy: the assassination of Rabin by a Jewish extremist in 1995, the waves of suicide bombings during the Second Intifada. Israel absorbed millions of immigrants from Russia, Ethiopia, and across the globe. It built a startup nation, a technological and economic powerhouse in the desert. Its military became one of the most formidable in the world. Yet, the core question, how to live alongside the Palestinians, how to share this small, sacred, and blood-soaked land, remained unanswered. Settlements grew in the West Bank, Hamas rose to power in Gaza, and peace felt more distant than ever. The story continues now. In our time, it is a story of incredible resilience and innovation, and of deep, persistent trauma. It is the story of a people who, against the tide of history, returned home, only to find that home was more complicated, more painful, and more contested than any ancient prophecy could have foretold. The echoes in the stones are not just from the past. They are the arguments of the present, the pleading for a future not yet written on the only piece of earth this people has ever called their own. Thanks for watching. This is a topic of incredible complexity, and this video is just one telling of a long and difficult story. We encourage you to keep learning, listening, and seeking out different perspectives. If you found this journey through history valuable, please like and subscribe for more.